109.4 degrees. That is what the thermometer read in Oklahoma City this week, and that number did not just edge past a record, it obliterated one that had stood since 1918. A record that survived 2 world wars, the Dust Bowl, and every brutal Oklahoma summer in between, gone in a single afternoon. And that was only one piece of what happened this week. Death Valley touched 118. Las Vegas sat at 110. 60 million Americans woke up under some kind of extreme heat alert. A severe storm system carrying winds over 75 miles an hour was bearing down on the plains. And a wall of dust thousands of feet high was threatening to swallow highways in Arizona after dark. This was not one weather event. This was 3 separate emergencies happening across the same country at the same time. And underneath all of it sits a detail most coverage barely mentioned. This is the 3rd heat dome to hit the central and southern United States this summer alone. And the power grid serving 17 states is currently running under a federal emergency order, just to avoid rolling blackouts. Let's go through this properly, region by region, threat by threat, because almost nowhere in the country was untouched this week. Start in the desert southwest, because that's where the numbers get most extreme. The National Weather Service issued an extreme heat warning across southwest Arizona and southeast California, and it's worth being precise about what that phrase actually means. This isn't uncomfortable heat. This is heat that kills people who don't take it seriously. The lower Colorado River Valley and Death Valley were forecast for 115 to 118 degrees. Temperatures that can put an unhydrated, unsheltered adult in serious danger within an hour. Yuma and El Centro were looking at 106 to 114. Las Vegas sat in the 107 to 110 range, with that warning stretching all the way through Friday evening, so this was never a one-day story for Nevada. But here's the part of a heat event like this that gets underexplained, and it's arguably the most dangerous part: the nights. In Phoenix, overnight lows were forecast near 90 degrees, with daytime highs in central Phoenix and the East Valley reaching 108 to 111, covering Scottsdale, Tempe, Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa, and Glendale, millions of people in one metro area. Normally, night is when your body gets a break. Core temperature drops, your heart and kidneys stop working overtime, and you recover from the day's heat stress. When the overnight low doesn't drop below the high 80s, that recovery window closes. Do that for several nights in a row and the body starts to break down, especially in elderly residents, small children, and anyone managing diabetes, heart disease, or kidney issues. If you're in the Phoenix area without working air conditioning, Maricopa County's 211 line can direct you to the nearest free cooling center with water, AC, and transportation help. And if you're anywhere near the Grand Canyon this week, this part matters. An extreme heat warning covers everything below 4,000 feet of elevation, with Phantom Ranch deep inside the canyon expecting 107 to 111 degrees. The Flagstaff Weather Office is explicitly telling day hikers on Bright Angel Trail not to go more than 1.5 miles past the rim, and to be completely out of the canyon between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. This isn't caution for caution's sake. People die in that canyon from heat every single year, and rescue helicopters can't safely operate in canyon air pushing past 115 degrees. If you're up top, stay up top. There's a second Arizona threat tonight that most people outside the region have never experienced: a haboob. The Tucson Weather Office warned of possible haboob formation, with blowing dust advisories already active from Gila Bend through the Tonopah Desert and Buckeye, and separately across Marana, Vail, and Green Valley near Tucson. Thunderstorm outflow winds of 45 to 55 miles an hour can kick up a wall of dust up to 3,000 feet tall, moving 30 to 40 miles an hour, dropping visibility to 0 in seconds. If you're driving I-10, I-19, or any southern Arizona highway and you hit one, the rule is simple: pull completely off the pavement, not onto the shoulder, off it entirely. Put it in park, set the brake, kill your lights, including your hazards, and keep your foot off the brake pedal so nobody behind you follows your taillights into the back of your car. Stay buckled in and wait it out. Arizona has a phrase for this: pull aside, stay alive. Never try to outdrive a dust wall. Southern California wasn't spared either. San Bernardino and Riverside counties, the Inland Empire, Fontana, Rancho Cucamonga, and Ontario were under heat advisory with highs up to 105, while the Santa Clarita and San Fernando valleys and the San Gabriel Mountain corridor sat in the 95 to 105 range. If you had to be outside in any of these areas, the advice was the same everywhere: get it done before 9 a.m. Now here's the part of this story that barely made headlines, but arguably matters more than any single temperature reading: the power grid itself. The Southwest Power Pool operates the grid for 17 states and roughly 20 million people across the central U.S. In late July, the Department of Energy issued an emergency order under Section 202(c) of the Federal Power Act. And as of this week, that order is still active and has been extended. What it does is authorize the grid operator to fire up backup generation at plants that are normally sitting idle the moment demand threatens to outrun supply. That authorization is the last step before something called a Level 3 energy emergency alert, which is the stage where rolling blackouts actually start. The grid, in other words, is one step away from that line. Record electricity demand from the heat, combined with wind generation underperforming, and several plants dealing with outages, pushed things right up to the edge. Utilities like OG&E in Oklahoma are directly asking customers to shift usage away from the 2 to 7 p.m. peak window, set thermostats to 78, and run laundry outside peak hours. This isn't a courtesy request. It's a grid holding on by a thin margin. If your power goes out during a heat event like this, don't wait around to see if it comes back. Get to a cooling center immediately, because heat stroke can become fatal within minutes. Moving into the southern plains, the heat emergency didn't stop at Arizona. Central and northern Oklahoma, including Oklahoma City, sat under an extreme heat warning. And as mentioned, Oklahoma City had already blown past its 1918 record by 5 full degrees. The city had logged 21 days this summer with highs in triple digits. And for context, the all-time record for a single Oklahoma City summer is 63 triple-digit days, set in 2011. This year is tracking toward that number. Heat index values were expected to reach 110 across central and northern Oklahoma, covering Moore, Norman, Edmond, Stillwater, Enid, and Lawton. In eastern Oklahoma and northwest Arkansas, Tulsa, Fort Smith, Muskogee, and Tahlequah were looking at heat index values up to 113. Central and eastern Arkansas, including Little Rock and Jonesboro, sat near or above 110 as well. And the advisory extended into northwest Louisiana and east Texas too, meaning this heat wasn't clearing tomorrow, it was continuing. In North Texas, the entire Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex sat under an extreme heat warning with actual air temperature, not heat index, reaching 108, covering Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, Plano, Frisco, and dozens of surrounding cities. If you were driving I-35, I-20, or I-30 through that stretch, a simple breakdown in 108-degree heat with no water in the car becomes a genuine emergency in half an hour. And this is worth sitting with for a second. Extreme heat is already the deadliest weather category in the United States, killing more people in an average year than hurricanes and tornadoes combined. Further south and east, Louisiana, Mississippi, and essentially the entire state of Florida were under heat advisories, with heat index values reaching 110 to 112 from the Panhandle, down through Tampa, Miami, and the Keys. And the same story extended up the coast through Savannah, Charleston, and the Outer Banks. This heat dome stretched from the desert southwest to the Atlantic coast, essentially covering the entire southern half of the country at once. And here's a detail that genuinely deserves more attention than it gets. Extreme heat is not classified as a disaster under the Stafford Act, the law that governs federal disaster response. That means a governor cannot request the same kind of federal relief for a heat wave that they can for a hurricane or a tornado. The response falls entirely on cities and counties, funded locally, improvised summer after summer. And this is happening during the third heat dome of the year, with 60 million people under alert this week alone, after 80 million were under alert during the July event. CDC data shows 2024 alone saw over 2,300 heat-related deaths in the U.S., the second highest annual total on record. And this summer's July heat domes alone have already been tied to at least 70 deaths according to newspaper analysis, with experts calling that number a significant undercount because of how slowly heat deaths get investigated and classified. Now shift to what might be the most immediately dynamic threat of the week: severe storms building over the Central Plains. The Storm Prediction Center issued a level 2 of 5 risk, and it's worth being direct. The word slight undersells what was actually brewing. A shortwave trough was pushing east over western Kansas, running into an unusually moist air mass stretching from the mid-Mississippi Valley into the plains. Surface dew points sat between 68 and 72 degrees, tropical level moisture more typical of a rainforest than the Great Plains. And the number that had meteorologists genuinely concerned was the CAPE, the stored energy available to fuel thunderstorms, sitting between 1,500 and 2,500 joules per kilogram along the Salina to Kansas City corridor. Ordinary strong summer storms run on 500 to 1,500. At 2,500, you're in a different category of storm entirely. An outflow boundary sitting across central Kansas gave storms an extra trigger point, and isolated severe cells were already forming near it. The main threat corridor ran from northeast Kansas into west central Missouri, putting both sides of Kansas City directly in the path, along with Topeka, Lawrence, and the I-70 corridor. A severe thunderstorm watch covering more than 20 counties across both states was active into the early morning hours. 3 separate threats came out of this setup. First, damaging wind. Gusts above 75 miles an hour were possible along any organized storm line, strong enough to down mature trees, snap power lines, and turn loose yard objects into projectiles. Second, large hail, with wind shear and steep lapse rates, giving hailstones time to grow before falling, strong enough to total a car parked outside. Third, and arguably the most widespread danger, flash flooding. With dew points that high, rainfall rates were expected to run heavy, 2 to 3 inches widespread, with storms training, repeatedly crossing the same ground, capable of dropping 4 to 6 inches or more in just a few hours. Because much of this rain was expected overnight and then into the Wednesday morning commute, drivers on I-70, I-435, I-35, or I-470 around Kansas City were told to expect real delays and possible closures. Elsewhere, northwest Iowa saw discrete supercell-style storms tracking into the central part of the state. Southern Wisconsin, near Milwaukee, and Racine saw a line capable of isolated wind damage, and Chicago and lower Michigan sat under a marginal severe risk. Looking ahead, the threat shifts east through Thursday, arguably becoming the most significant day of the whole stretch, with flash flood risk rising sharply overnight into Thursday morning from southern Iowa and northern Missouri through northern Illinois, including Chicago, and into southern Wisconsin. Ground already saturated from the prior night's storms means even moderate rainfall could cause fast urban flooding, and anyone able to shift their Thursday commute was advised to consider it. Meanwhile, the heat offers no real break. The upper-level ridge, trapping it all in place, stays anchored over the Four Corners region through Friday. And Oklahoma's triple-digit streak was expected to continue uninterrupted through at least the weekend. By Friday, a cold front was expected to bring some storm chances to the mid-South and mid-Atlantic. But relief needs a caveat. Heat index values easing into the upper 90s and low 100s is still dangerous heat for vulnerable people, not comfortable weather. Heading into the following weekend, that same upper-level high was expected to expand north and shift east, meaning no significant break across the southwest, south-central plains, or lower Mississippi Valley, while the severe storm threat along the slow-moving front continues through the week. If you take one thing away from any of this, let it be the practical part. If you're in a severe storm zone, have at least 2 independent ways to get warned: a phone app with alerts on, a NOAA weather radio, awareness of outdoor sirens before you go to sleep. If a tornado warning is issued, don't wait to see how it looks outside. Get to the lowest interior room away from windows immediately. And know the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Exhaustion means you're still sweating, dizzy, weak, nauseous. Get inside and cool down. Heat stroke means hot, red, dry skin, no sweating, confusion, or loss of consciousness. And it's a 911 call, not a wait and see. It can cause permanent organ damage within minutes and become fatal within an hour. Check on elderly neighbors this week. Call relatives who live alone. Heat doesn't produce the dramatic footage a tornado or hurricane does, which is exactly why it kills more people than both combined most years and still gets treated like background noise. This week, it wasn't background noise anywhere in the country.